everybody, and welcome to This Week in X, and this is a somewhat special episode. There is a comic book out this week on the 3rd of March, 2021, called Demon Days X-Men. It is the work, both story and art, of Peach Momoko, who is a very famous and sought-after cover artist for the past little while, and I believe this might be Peach Momoko's first sequential work, but here's the thing, I don't know, because I don't do variant covers, and I don't read alternate universes, which this comic book is. So rather than, or so we think at least, so rather than being a normal This Week in X, Tyler and Fariha, my colleagues and friends here, have read the issue, and we are going to lightning round about a few things in the issue, and they're going to pitch it to me to see if they can get me to care about an alternate universe comic book. So this will have spoilers about Demon Days X-Men. We might also be commenting on other things, especially because this has some similar thematic stuff to this week's issue of Hellions. So this comes with the same full spoiler warning that all of our other episodes come with, even though the format's going to be just a little bit different. For Demon Days X-Men, the way we're going to do it is we're going to start with a lightning round of your initial reactions, but remember, you're trying to convince me if this is worth buying, reading, picking up, caring about. So Fariha actually was the one who was the most hyped for this, because you really did love Peach Momoko's covers, as I understand it. So what is your lightning round pitch on Demon Days X-Men?
So without spoiling it,
well,
I
you
think
can.
I really... Oh, I can?
Well, that's...
Okay.
That's up to you.
Okay, I can. So the thing is, if you read this week's Hellion, which is Hellions number 10, there was a whole dream sequence of where Kwanon gets trapped, and there's like a whole thing about her daughter and everything, and she asks the daughter, like, you know, what's your name? What's your name? Well, the name is actually revealed in this issue of Demon Days, which has been touted as out of continuity, but is the question, because the way the story goes, it's a Japanese folklore that is being read by a child, and at the end we know the child's name, but the story also features Kwanon with a real Wolverine called Logan. And she's kind of going from town to town and getting rid of different the demons that are based on Japanese folklore. So that's one of the reasons it just like very hard to say that this is completely out of continuity when Hellions has that whole storyline going on.
Interesting. Tyler, what would be your lightning round? Why should I care?
I mean, the one reason why you should care is because, you know, it's only because if you are a Momoko fan. So if you really like her work, her covers and her pinups, she actually transitioned very well into sequential art. I mean, it's not the best art, like sequential art that you have seen, but given the fact that, you know, and again, same as Peter, I don't think I've seen her do any sequential art before, so I'm just going to say that this is her first sequential art. I mean, given that this is her very first one, I thought she's I'm really impressed by what she did here. Plot wise, you know, I did think that it might be also linked to the Helen's 10 dream sequence, but you know, if we do not consider that and we just say that this is a Elseworld type of story, I don't have a lot to say about the plot because it leans heavily into Japanese folklore, of which I know very little of. So yeah, so I would say if you're a huge fan of her and her art, you should pick this up so that, you know, Marvel will give her more sequential art to do. If not, you know, if you're not a huge fan or if you're just a casual fan, just wait 3 months for Marvel Unlimited.
One thing I would say though is like the art matches perfectly with the story though, because it's a Japanese folklore story, and the art is very much of like the old Japanese art that you see, like, you know, the whole story of yokai and then, you know, a samurai going through a town and everything. So it has that element of it very well. But the thing is, it also does this really cool trick. I call it a trick. It's like everything problem with the story, you can wash it away by saying it's a child reading a book. So it has that as well. So there are certain times that the scene just kind of cuts to the next, and it's like, oh yeah, so when she was reading the book, she just skipped over a page, or she didn't like it, or she didn't just. It's actually a trick of it. And then I was also talking about that if I were the editor, I think my choice would be, but then again, that's not flexing her sequential art talent. So I don't think that's what, but I would like more pages where it's like a sprawling double splash page of so many things going on. And the stories are just kind of told in like an introspective, or like you're giving, what is that word, like exposition kind of thing. I wish there was a couple more pages of that, because she starts off with that one page of that, but then it just then moves on to the sequential. I think that would have been really a cool marrying her talent of cover page versus sequential art thing.
Well, let me ask kind of a follow-up, and Fariha, you're starting to get into this already, but we've seen a lot of artists transition into being writers throughout Marvel's whole history, even more recently. Both Declan Shalvey and Jordi Belair have recently made the transition to being writers, and it's a way for them to kind of like maximize their time and profitability, because it certainly takes them less time to write a book than to draw a book. But how do you think Peach Momoko is I don't know if it's her first time ever, but certainly in a Marvel superhero comic book, her first time as a writer? How did she acquit herself? Is it smooth? Fariha's already talked about how she's used some kind of interesting tropes. So Tyler, what did you think about her as a first-time writer?
I think for her, she did not put in the English words because there is someone, Zach Davison, who does the English adaptation. So, I mean, this basically is probably, in my opinion, fit right into the Marvel way of like producing a comics. She probably have an idea of the comics, of what she wants to do, and she starts like drawing it. And I mean, I've met her. She doesn't speak English much, so she speaks a lot. I mean, her husband speaks English, but she doesn't. So so she probably had the skeleton of the story out and written in Japanese, and then they had someone translate it into English.
So one thing to say about that though, because I'm forgetting his name, Davison.
Zach Davison.
Zach Davison, he actually tweeted out that there is no English. This is not a translation. So he made sure that he's like, because people are like, oh, it must be very nice to read in Japanese. There is no Japanese script. It's written in collaboration between he was pretty much he was actually helping her form the words, so the thing is it just flows better and stuff. So there is no Japanese script.
It's not like she sat down, typed the Japanese script or outline or whatever and said, here, take this. It's not like a manga would be.
No, it's not. It's not that, because he was very adamant about that in his tweet. So the thing is, it's just a collaboration. It's like, hey, I don't know the language. Can you help me out? Like how to express this? It's like, oh, you should write it this way. So it's more that. Got it.
So it's basically her story. It's just like but the words were being written in English, or helped with the English. Way of expressing what she wanted to express.
Right. So it was edited. It was edited by by him. But and the thing is, I think because I know of she actually writes English somewhat. So the thing is, I think there were some. So there are some emails response that people got, which had signed Peach. So I don't know whether it was her husband writing on her behalf or her. So it's very possible that she's writing is potentially a bit better than
her.
I certainly write way better in French, my one other language, than I can't barely speak a lick of it, but I can carry a conversation.
So that's something that it was kind of explained that there's no translation for this. So you can have a pipe dream of that, because people are like, oh yeah, can we have the Japanese version at the back? It's like, what are you guys talking about?
It's not a thing. So here's my final kind of quick response round question on this. Is there one art moment in the book itself that just made you go wow, this is why I love Peach Momoko?
Many.
Sorry, yeah?
Many. There's many pages. Yeah, there's many pages, and it just it's really used different lore of Marvel and Japanese folklore and then mixes it together. And then there are a lot of pages that I was like, whoa, that's pretty neat, So I would say there is many.
Tyler, is there one image that really stuck with you out of this?
I mean, the very first appearance of Jubilee, because she was like lying on the side and the colors were like popping. So I thought it was like, oh, immediately, even though there is not a lot of like, I mean, yeah, her name is Juju, but apart from that, you don't know she's Jubilee when she first appears in this comics, because there's no powers or anything, but the whole demeanor and like some of the characteristics color, like the yellow is there, and the shades, she has this red band on her face, and it just speaks immediately, say, oh, this must be Jubilee. So I thought it was really fun.
And at the end, there is like a what you call it, like background information section where they said that where the different things come from. And there's this one page where there's explaining this type of characters in Japan, in Japanese art. And it matches so well with that, because it's like, okay, so she saw that and she saw Jubilee. It's like, now I'm going to match this together.
Well, and also the transition, right? Because the very last page, or I mean the second last page, you know that there's a transition,
right?
Because she changed her style slightly, just this slightly change, and you're like, oh, okay, that's different, And I thought the Miss Kuroki, which is the like like the school mistress, or or her mom or whatever. I thought she was Black Widow.
Right. I thought exactly the same.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I'm saying, who is this girl?
I know, but because she has that Black Widow like hair.
Yeah. No. I'm talking about the girl who's reading the story.
The reading.
So the thing,
okay.
Yeah, the reading the story, and then she talks about mom, and then it just like the whole thing. It's just, I mean, it's connected to. But the thing is also, because this is a story set in Japan, Logan has to be there, and Logan and it's like a real life Wolverine.
I think it's drawn more like the wolf than a Wolverine.
Oh,
because a Wolverine is not that big.
Not native to Japan necessarily. Yeah.
And that's true. That's the thing. It's like, and then his name is Logan, and then he also has healing factor.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's really interesting, because I kind of came in with the assumption that like, oh, it's just like an alternate universe book. Like somebody just wants to tell this, like beautiful painted Japanese art influenced version of an X-Men story, which to me is just, my whole thing is, it's not that I hate these stories, but it's just, I read so many comic books. Like I would rather read some deep cut Wonder Woman comic book than read this. But it sounds like from the two of you talking that it's actually just a really cool hybrid of a traditional Japanese folklore tale with X-Men stuff layered into it. And I actually love that kind of stuff. Like I love when actual folktales are reused and appropriated to retell stories, as opposed to something that's more like Marvel 1602, where it's like, it's Marvel, but it's year 1602. Like to me, you could not pay me to be interested in that. That's just how my brain works. And I kind of thought this would be that, but it sounds like it's something really different. So I think I will read it when it hits Unlimited in 3 short months. Now, how many, is it going to have another issue? 3? Is it ongoing? What is the story?
I think limited.
They advertised another issue, but
there's
the issue is also number
right
1.
After. Yeah. So the thing is, next issue is called Demon Days Mariko, number 1.
Oh, and I'm looking at the cover of that now, and that character really does look like Black Widow on the cover.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the thing is like, so that's one is like, oh, maybe. And it's also had the Hydra. See, the Hydra, the Black Widow, and then, then Mariko. And
the mask, Japanese demon mask looks like Hydra.
All of that.
Oh, and so does it connect to the guy? What is the guy from Wolverine and Kitty Pryde, Tyler? Ogun?
Oh,
does it connect to Ogun?
Ogun.
Okay,
I don't
cool.
know. Yeah.
We don't know. But the thing is, I think it's like, there should be more stories kind of like this, done well. I'm not saying that, or maybe, give people chance to flex their art, their talent. And, and if it's out, you can be like, oh, well, yeah, that was never in continuity anyway, So I think it's a good idea to do this, and then maybe even like make them for charity, so that people who are obsessed with it, Jen Bartle should do some of these, because I know that she have done sequential work for Blackbird, her image work, and also Jen and the hologram. But I think like give her something like this too, so let all your talent flow.
But I have to say that Peach Momoko is extremely fast.
Oh yeah.
Because when I asked her for a commission once, it was before NYCC, but in my typical fashion, I like to give like 3 choices. So I was like, so I was conversing with her husband. I was like, okay, I would like her to do something, and we agree on the price. And it's like, okay, these are the 3 choices. And less than 24 hours later, her husband emailed me 3 pictures, and it's like, oh, she decided that she likes all 3 choices, and she drew 3 of them. And then she asked me, say, like, which one do you like best?
Wow.
And I ended up buying 2 out of 3.
And then check her also on her Twitter and Instagram and her Facebook, like when she does the recordings of her art. He's right, Tyler's right, it's very fast. But before we go, I want to show this, because this is I'm obsessed with this. So we're talking about her Japanese style and everything. So this is one cover she done for Paris 2119. This is like it was a Kickstarter exclusive.
Yeah.
But look at the art.
Is it like a fashion book? Like, I hope it's like a runway collection, just illustrated. No, it's got an actual story.
It's an actual story. It's a sci-fi. And sadly, she's not the protagonist, which makes this whole thing just, I'm like, okay, why? But the thing is, like, I had to have it. Like,
It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. And the thing is, it's just a look, because and that's also one of the things we talked about, writers drawing people, or women especially, and then they all look the same. But look her Psylocke equivalent in her Demon Days, who looks like a Japanese woman, and this woman looks like she is from Paris. She's an African American woman from Paris, and it's just gorgeous. Like her art, it's amazing. So I'm glad to see that she's doing something like this, and hopefully maybe we get to see her more in some other in continuity issues.
Yeah.
It's fun for me because I sometimes miss out on some of these direct market things, because I don't buy things in floppy. I don't look at variant covers because Marvel won't put them in their darn books. At least Dynamite, say what you will about Dynamite, but they put a lot of their variant covers in the digital books, and I spend time sitting and looking at them, and it's fun to see variant cover art. Xenoscope sometimes does that too, and I know they're cheesecakey, and that's what they do. But I would like it if Marvel would put their digital versions of variant covers in their books. DC did it for the whole beginning part of Rebirth. If you got a digital version of one of the books, it had the second cover, and you get a whole extra minute of satisfaction of just checking out this beautiful artwork. But I bring that up to say the only way I know who Peach Momoko was before this, having been not a buyer of any of those things physically, is because our friend Frank Gogol had a comic book No Heroine for Source Point Press, I think, last year, and she did one of the variant covers, and it got really, really hot. And he was like, oh, I know you're all going to be after this Peach Momoko cover. And I'm like, I'm just after the book because Frank is my friend and I want to read his comic book. So then I had to be like, who is this Peach Momoko character? And that was my route of discovery. So it's just really interesting to me that, Fariha's whole comment about it would be great to have more things like this. I think so too, because for those of us who are much more about digital reading, or don't play the variant cover game, some of these amazing artists exist outside of our reference entirely, and they don't really get introduced to us until you get them doing interiors. And that's a shame, or until they're at least doing a run of covers on a book that we're reading, like Mark Brooks, doing a run of covers. Yeah. And so, I just want to appreciate more amazing art. So I'm kind of all for taking one of these artists and saying, how could you do a whole issue? Like Kevin Wada for Wicked and Divine, I love Kevin Wada from his Tumblr days. And he, for Wicked and Divine, they were like, what can you do? And he's like, let's do it as a fashion magazine, right? And that's how you get a whole Kevin Wada issue. So let's see what these comic book artists want to do, to make a full issue and do that. So I think that's really cool.
And now that Peter said it, let's make a Peach Momoko fashion thing, and then put this as the cover. again. Let's reuse this as a cover, or maybe she can do one more better, and then just have a fashion magazine.
I love
of
fashion
just-
illustrations. I would absolutely pick up a book that's just like people doing fashion of comic book characters, comic book character inspired fashion. I love that stuff. All right, well, that is our discussion of Demon Days X-Men. We want to know from you, if you did not read this book, did Tyler and Fariha convince you that you should read it, even if it's on Marvel Unlimited in a few months? Or if you did read this book, would you agree with their pitch, or would you pitch me some different way? We would love to hear from you below. If you're looking for Hellions number 10, it's in another video on the channel. And as always, we will be back next week and every week talking about all of the X-Men comics from Marvel Comics. Why, Fariha? Why do we do that?
Because X-Men is better when it's wrapped together.
That's right. And I have to say, I felt pretty left out that I didn't read this one together, but at least I still got to hear about it from the two of you. So from all three of us, and Harry, who hasn't joined us for this episode, to all of you out there watching and listening, thanks so much for being a part of This Week in X, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Mm.